Hi everybody, I'm Susan Mulvihill. Today's topic is winter sowing, and what a cool, easy way to start your plants from seeds. Now we have a nasty windstorm going on outside, so I'm staying indoors where it's nice and warm. Winter sowing involves planting your seeds in containers that you then set outdoors in the dead of winter where they're subjected to all kinds of cold temperatures and crazy weather. They germinate at the right time and it works great. Now here are 6 reasons you should be interested in trying out winter sowing yourself. I start a lot of seeds indoors, and if I can plant a lot of them in containers that go outdoors, I've got more room to grow more plants. That's always an important consideration, right? With the winter sowing method, seeds germinate as soon as conditions are right. They're not waiting on us to remember to plant them or waiting for us to have room to plant them indoors. You won't have to harden off the seedlings before you plant them in the garden because they've been outdoors all along. So they're already acclimated to the temperatures and the intensity of the sunlight. You won't have a problem with damping off syndrome, which is a type of fungus that kills young seedlings indoors because there's good air circulation. I like the fact that Mother Nature waters the seeds and the seedlings for us just automatically, so we don't have to remember to do that. Although we do need to check on them on occasion, and if you live in a particularly dry area, you may need to water them from time to time during the winter. And most of all, it's a cool, amazing technique that you will love, and it gives us a chance to start seeds a little earlier than we ordinarily would. This is just a friendly reminder that I have a brand new book coming out, the Vegetable Garden Pest Handbook. I wrote it for all levels of gardeners from beginner to master gardener. This will help you identify both the good bugs and the bad bugs in your garden and provide you with all sorts of methods for dealing with the bad ones using effective organic controls. This is going to be such a great resource. If you pre-order it now, you will receive special bonus content that is not in the book and can't be found anywhere else. It contains my best tips for growing your favorite veggies and even some you might not have thought of growing. All you have to do is order it from your bookstore or preferred online source and email me your confirmation. My email address is susan@susansinthegarden.com. Then I'll send you a link to the bonus content. This is a great deal. Okay, let's get back to winter sowing. So what kinds of supplies do you need for winter sowing? First and foremost, you need some containers, and they should be a good size because you need room for about 3 to 4 inches of either a potting soil or a germination mix, also known as a seed starting mix, to go in the bottom. What I like to use is gallon-sized milk jugs. They're not completely clear, but they do let a lot of light in. You could also use pop bottles. You could use large clear juice containers. So whatever you do, you need something that will hold a bit of soil in the bottom. And I'll show you how I prepare these milk jugs in a moment. You will also need some tape, which will be a part of preparing the jugs. You will need potting soil, like I mentioned, or a seed starting mix. You obviously will need some seeds. And then I like to use some plant tags. I'm just recycling some old ones so that I can mark what I have planted in my containers. And of course, to do that, you need either like a Sharpie or some type of a waterproof pen. And you need some kind of cutting implements for preparing your jugs. So let's talk about how you would prepare a container, and I'm going to use a milk jug as an example because that seems to be what most people like to use. It's what I used last year, which was the first time I ever did winter sowing, and they worked really well. So this is a Costco milk jug, and here is your basic grocery store milk jug. They each have a large opening on the top, and once you have planted your seeds and you're going to move the containers out to your garden, you're going to leave the lids off, because this is where moisture from rain, snow, or hail is going to go in and water the potting mix or seed starting mix that you've put inside, and eventually water seedlings that are coming up. So it's really important that you have an opening in the top. Also, I've punched some holes in the top, and I've put drainage holes in the bottom as well, because drainage is important. So what I did is I took a tape measure. I measured up about 4.5 inches from the bottom, and I used my Sharpie to mark a line at that height all the way around. And I noted where the handle is on both sides. So then I took either a pair of scissors or a knife. I started on the right hand side of where the handle is and cut all the way around, and I stopped just before I got to the other part of the handle. And so now this makes a little lid that you can easily open up so you can put your potting soil inside and check on things. So that is essentially what you need to do. The next step is to place about 3 to 4 inches of lightly moistened potting soil or germination mix into the bottom of each container. The reason you want it pre-moistened is because if you start with a dry mix, it is very hard to get it to take in the moisture. It's just a nightmare. So definitely pre-moisten it. You're looking for about the amount of moisture you'd expect to feel in a wrung out sponge. And once I've put the soil in, I just sort of pat it down a little bit to make it a little bit more firm. Next up is planting your seeds in each container. For this one, I'm going to start some Patterson onion seeds. You can see they're a black seed. And I'm actually going to sow every one of these seeds in this container. They're older onion seeds. They do not have a long shelf life, and so I might not get very good germination. I will later be teasing them apart and planting them individually in the garden. I'm going to water them so they make good contact with the soil. And then I'm going to cover them with a 1/4 inch of potting soil. Next step is to put a label in the container. I'm going to label also on the outside of the container, but just in case the label washes off the outside, it's good to have something on the inside. So this lid goes over, and I'm just going to set it aside for the moment, and I'll plant the other containers. I'm going to plant some Love in a Mist seeds in this next container. Look at how cool those are. They're beautiful. That's called Chocolate and Cream. And I'm going to try not to get too crazy about how many seeds I put in here, because I need to be able to pull them apart in the spring very carefully. They don't like to be transplanted very much, but I've seen other folks who've been successful at it, so I thought that's what I would do too. Oh, I'm probably planting way more than I should. That's a common lament with winter gardeners, right? Now be sure to follow the instructions on your seed packets about how much soil to put on the seeds. In this particular case, the instructions said barely cover the seed, so that's why I'm putting so little soil on the top. Now you'll notice with this one I actually had better restraint, and those cool seeds belong to calendulas, or pot marigold is what they're called. Zeolites is the variety, and isn't that a gorgeous color? So I have put them in there. The packet says to cover them with 1/4 to 1/2 inch soil. Yeah, you would be amazed at the amount of seeds that you can grow using the winter sowing method. And one source that I like to consult with is wintersown.org, because they list all kinds of vegetables, perennials, and annuals that you can start using the winter sowing method. Now I know that my calendulas that are growing out in the garden self-sow. And so you know that they're going to make it through the winter, and that means these guys are going to be ideal for using the winter sowing method. Okay, all of the seeds are planted. Next step is taping. To tape the jugs shut, you want to use something like a duct tape, painter's tape, shipping tape, anything along those lines. You're just trying to hold the top and the bottom together. And I think duct tape really works the best, to be honest. Okay, so there's one. Once you have taped the top to the bottom of each container, make sure you write on the outside what it is that you've planted in there, because it might be hard to see the label inside. And then you're ready to move them out to your garden. Now remember, you're not going to screw the lids back on the top, because that would prevent moisture from getting into the container, which in turn will keep the soil moist and eventually water your seedlings. Do not put these containers underneath the eaves of your house or any other kind of structure, because that would also prevent moisture from getting into these jugs. I tend to put mine out in my garden next to a raised bed. I've found that they're quite heavy, so they tend not to blow over in the wind, but if you're in a really windy area, you might consider putting these into a container to keep them all upright, but make sure that container drains so that you don't have water sitting in the bottom of it. Make sure that they get plenty of sunlight. That is very important. Now I did this last year. I had really good success, so that's why I wanted to try it again this year. But there's one thing that I'm going to do differently, provided things are going well. What I did last year is, once the seedlings were up and growing, I cut a little window in the side of each container so that they got plenty of air circulation. Now I saw a video on YouTube where the gal didn't do that at all, and yet her plants grew great. And what I like about that idea is, if I don't cut a hole in here, that means I can recycle these containers for next year. So that's my game plan, but I'm going to have to play it by ear. Make sure you check on yours every so often to see if it looks like they're getting enough moisture. If they seem like they're a little dry, you don't need to pull them apart. Just water carefully and gently in the top. So it is so easy to do this, and it's a fun, different method of seed starting to try. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. I'll see you next week. Happy gardening.